Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this clown decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And if you thought things couldn't get any worse, I am at a point where probably everything in this video is going to sound like hyperbole. But I want to assure you, I am not being hyperbolic when I say anything in this video, and I'm going to do my best to stick to that. Because effectively, we are going to be talking once again about our idiot government effectively saying this to Mauritius.
It's free real estate.
Yes, because once again we are talking about Keir Starmer's push ahead with the Chagos Islands deal. The new agreement offers Mauritius complete sovereignty over Diego Garcia, effectively doubling the initial $9 billion offer, the country's Prime Minister said. So yes, in the thumbnail and the title, when I say £18 billion will be given away along with our territory, what else am I supposed to say? How am I supposed to give you a decent rundown of why this is happening? I'm not being hyperbolic here, this is just because, at best, the people in charge don't think Britain is sovereign and think international courts are all that matter, and at worst, they hate us. And I actually have evidence that they hate us. Here is a small clip of Philippe Sands Casey, who is talking about, well, not even just talking about, boasting about how he is happy to put Britain in an objectively worse position on the world stage.
We were talking earlier in the student event about the fact that you've taken on a lot of cases against the UK, your home country, and that's completely acceptable.
Yeah, it's a really fantastic thing about Britain, that I think it's probably the only country in the world where when you've been to an international court against your own country, won and humiliated them completely, they still celebrate you.
I'll go through the longer clip of that in another video, but you get the idea. Yeah, we are run by people who objectively hate us. That is all I can glean from you here. It may sound hyperbolic, but I don't know how else to commentate on that clip. And again, this is Keir Starmer's friend. This is effectively what Keir Starmer is doing. He is trying his best to give the Chagos Islands away to make his friend here happy, because he represented Mauritius against Britain for the Chagos Islands at a completely non-binding court decision, by the way, in the International Court for the UN, is laughing at us because he humiliated us, and effectively we're not trying him for treason. That is what he is laughing about. And as cringe as it may seem to be in the modern age, I think bringing back treason charges for people like this is perfectly justified. Anyway, Keir Starmer intends to push ahead with his deal to cede sovereignty of the Chagos Islands, the Mauritian Prime Minister has said, despite American concerns about the growing threat of Chinese influence in the region. Yeah, Starmer doesn't care, UN said something, therefore we have to do it. Navin Ramgoolam, 77, the new deal offered major concessions and gave Mauritius complete sovereignty over the island of Diego Garcia, which is where the naval base for the US and UK is, which is home to the... oh, I just said it. He described the agreement as Africa's last decolonisation, which naturally is making our Foreign Minister, David Lammy, incredibly happy. Speaking to MPs in Port Louis, the capital of Mauritius, Ramagaloon claimed Starmer had effectively doubled the £9 billion originally offered to Mauritius and weakened the British lease for Diego Garcia following renegotiations. Just incredible. Before I was saying that Starmer could barely give the Chagos Islands away. He could barely give them away. And now, I don't know. Again, I have no idea how to comment on this other than sounding hyperbolic and saying it just looks like our government hate us. It looks like they hate Britain. It looks like they want Britain to be destroyed. You got to bear in mind with all this, right? We were told by this government for ages that there is a £22 billion black hole that needs to be filled, and now they are throwing out $18 billion to a foreign country to give away our islands. It's crazy. I have no other comment on this other than they are phenomenally stupid. Given that he is a lawyer, he probably isn't stupid, therefore I have to assume that it's malicious. This is only malicious. I can't see any other way for it. I'd say write to your MP, but in my experience, only do that if they're not a Labour MP. My Labour MP literally just gives me the party line every time. It's like she's got a black hole for a brain. I don't know how else to put it. Basically, none of my concerns were ever addressed. She didn't pass on my concerns to the Foreign Secretary, which is kind of half of the point. of being a representative in Parliament. And so it's just been pointless. Like, honestly, it's probably pointless writing to your Labour MP. You can try to if you want. But at this point, I think the only thing to say is, if you've had a letter back effectively giving you the party line, let them know that you're going to campaign against them. Let them know that this is so disastrous, you are going to do everything in your power to keep them out of Parliament next election. Anyway, the British Prime Minister informed me he intends to push ahead with the agreement reached between Mauritius and the UK. Ramagoolam said, "We remain confident that we will reach a speedy resolution in the coming weeks." The Chagos Archipelago, a remote chain of 7 tropical atolls in the middle of the Indian Ocean, is a British overseas territory. Diego Garcia, the largest island, is home to a US naval base that can host nuclear-capable bombers and submarines. In 2019, a non-binding advisory opinion by the International Court of Justice awarded the islands to Mauritius, and it was nonsense. It's total nonsense. International courts are just crazy. They have basically been created to punish great powers of history and weight absolutely every decision in favour of, well, countries that weren't great powers of history. It's ridiculous. I'm not shocked that Donald Trump has been on the warpath against these international institutions. He recently left the Human Rights Council. I don't see why not. There are members of that council from countries that have incredibly horrendous records on human rights. So what's the point? They're all a joke. The time for these international treaties is over. All it's done is weaken everyone and allowed bad actors to grow. There's no point. Concerned that Britain would be in breach of international law, it failed to comply with the advisory opinion. Starmer announced a deal in October to cede sovereignty to the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, and he doesn't seem to understand that if Mauritius are not taking the Chagos Islands when we're practically giving them away, then clearly he has bad intentions, and it doesn't really matter what the international courts say. Hey, we tried to give it away, it didn't work. What are we supposed to do? However, he paused negotiations last month to address concerns in President Trump's administration over Chinese influence in the country. Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, raised the Chagos Islands in his first call with David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, and warned of China's malign influence. In a call with his Mauritian counterpart on Friday, Starmer used the exact same phrase, saying that Diego Garcia needed to be protected from malign influence. And at that point, the best thing you can do is just keep it. But no, Starmer has friends that hate Britain, ergo Starmer probably hates Britain as well, or the idea of British sovereignty. Hell, he's even been in interviews saying, "I'd rather Davos rule the world than Parliament run Britain." Again, I might be sounding hyperbolic, but what else am I supposed to glean from it? I am just giving you the conclusion of the evidence that is provided in front of me. I've barely seen anything Starmer has done that shouts to me, "This man loves Britain." Everything I'm seeing so far is telling me that he hates Britain. It's crazy. Again, you're literally being told by effectively the country that we rely on for defence, because our army and navy are just basically dead at this point, telling you that doing this is probably going to lead to China having more influence where we don't want them to, and you're still going ahead with it, just saying, "Oh, just trust China's vassal in Mauritius, just trust him, it'll be fine." Ramagoolam was elected in November, replacing Pravind Jugnauth, a Prime Minister of Mauritius. He said the original deal signed by the previous government was a sellout. Under the terms of the original deal, Britain would pay $9 billion in instalments over 99 years to lease back Diego Garcia. Again, this is a Prime Minister saying it's a sellout for us to literally give islands away and then pay for the pleasure of having to rent out land that we already have now. You don't see landlords doing things like this, do you? According to Ramagoolam, the original deal also included a provision allowing Britain to unilaterally extend the lease by another 40 years once the original term expired. Right, so his issue is that us giving islands away gave us too much power over this deal. Again, I want to make this clear, like, don't trust foreign prime ministers, why would you ever do that? But when they are literally saying, right, Britain giving them away is actually too good for Britain, you got to start thinking, maybe shouldn't trust this guy. But again, we are either run by idiots or malicious people who hate Britain. Again, I am leaning toward the latter there. So the renegotiated deal means that Mauritius could actually veto that extension to the lease, and in a further concession from Starmer, because again, this deal of giving the islands away was too good for Britain, he said Britain's annual payments to Mauritius would be front-loaded and linked to inflation, effectively doubling the amount of money that Britain will pay compared to the deal signed with the previous Mauritian government. Amazing. They'd agreed to package for 99 years, but not inflation-proof, Ramagoolam said. The exchange rate, because it is in dollars, will be fixed once and then last 99 years. How can that be? Any ordinary 5th form, 6th form student would agree that you know inflation exists. What is the point of having money and having half it by the end? This is what would happen. We made the calculation. Yeah, I don't think Starmer cares. At this point, I think Starmer would literally just cede the entirety of the UK to you at this point, because you won't accept any other deal. Again, this is basic art of deal stuff, and it's something I have to keep telling people. And it's something that kept coming up with the deal with the EU. You have to have a we will walk away exit strategy, otherwise you will just be taken for a ride, as is happening here. The thing is that they don't want an exit strategy. The British government, the Labour government right now, are trying to literally give these islands away. And they can't even do that. They have to pay them too, because they want to do nothing short of humiliate us, as Philippe Sands said in that previous clip. Anyway, British sources are disputing Ramgoolam's claim that payments had been effectively doubled, saying that elements of the original data were inflation-linked and that an extension to the lease had always required the approval of both governments. I mean, I just don't believe you. Why don't I believe them? The British government, so Labour, have absolutely every intention of downplaying how ridiculous this deal is. Why would Ramgoolam care? Ramgoolam's probably going to be more honest about the deal because he can say to his parliament, hey look, I'm humiliating an old great power and getting islands that are 3,000 miles away from us into our power, and they have to pay us for the pleasure. Isn't that great? Whereas the British government have to keep saying, well, it's kind of happening, but it's not as expensive as you'd think. The government said, while we don't get into a running commentary, the figures are entirely inaccurate. Rubio, before his appointment as Secretary of State, had lambasted the deal, calling it a serious threat to our national security and interests in the Indian Ocean. Despite opposition from Rubio and Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, ministers are confident that Trump administration will eventually approve the deal. If any of the Trump administration happen to see this video, don't approve it ever. Do not approve it. Lamy will meet Rubio at the Munich Security Conference next week for further discussions on the future of Diego Garcia. They've got other priorities and haven't seen all the details yet, the government sources said. We think they're going to agree with us. We're confident, but no decision is imminent. Just crazy. Just crazy. Why do they think that? Why do they... You've got the Trump administration effectively telling everyone, yeah, this is not only a ridiculous deal, in nice language, but it's also directly threatening our interests in the Indian Ocean. We probably shouldn't do this. And then you have the UK government effectively trying to double down, saying, oh, they'll agree to it eventually. Why? You're not giving any positives here other than it follows international law. Why would Trump care about international law when he's currently removing the US from international law? It's crazy. I mean, honestly, I'm at a point where I just think the entirety of the British Labour cabinet just have dementia or something. It's like they forget what they say 5 minutes ago. It's like they forget all the promises they made over the election period. It's like they forgot they said the other day that they need to make up £22 billion worth of a black hole caused by Liz Truss and the Tories or something like that, which is all nonsense, by the way. 9 billion of that was all down to the public sector pay rises that Labour promised. Well, no, sorry, implemented in their budget. But I say it's the British Labour cabinet. Apparently even the cabinet are beyond confused by this. Ramgoolam's intervention provoked criticism of Starmer from within his own cabinet. A person familiar with the views of one of the cabinet ministers said that they did not understand why the UK was agreeing to pay large sums of money to Mauritius at a time when the Treasury was telling the UK government departments to prepare for spending cuts. I suppose the argument back is that it's 18 billion, or, well, apparently not, according to anonymous British official sources. Either way, it doesn't really matter. 9 billion is already ridiculous. But either way, yes, we are giving money away. Okay, it's over 99 years, sure, but a lot of it's going to be paid up front initially, and it's also going to be linked with inflation, which is also nuts. It's also worth noting, by the way, that, you know, assuming it is going to be £18 billion, which I'm trusting the Mauritian president better than the Labour government. They lie to me all the time. Why would I trust them? But if that's true, that is actually almost double. I think it's $22 billion, and Mauritius' GDP is $14 billion. It's more than Mauritius' GDP. We are literally paying for the entirety of Mauritius to literally give them some small islands that are barely habitable, by the way. You know, it survived about 100 people on it at one point or something with a couple of plantations. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. And yeah, I'm totally with the cabinet ministers that are saying, why are we literally giving Mauritius more than more than what it's worth, Mauritius itself is worth, to give them some islands 3,000 miles away from them that they have basically never, ever had any sovereignty over. It's crazy on every level. Oh, because Keir Starmer's lawyer friend represented Britain to try and humiliate them, and he wants to humiliate them further. Oh. We probably shouldn't have voted him in. The second person familiar with the different cabinet ministers' views said Starmer should cancel the deal. Both suggested Starmer was acting on legal advice from Attorney General Richard Hermer, which, well, again, another lawyer friend. I'm sure that there's probably quotes out there of Hermer saying he wants to humiliate Britain as well. That seems to be what human rights lawyers love to do. Mauritius has been battling to secure control of the archipelago for the past 7 decades. In 2019, the International Court of Justice found the 1965 takeover of the islands had been unlawful, a ruling affirmed by the United Nations General Assembly, none of which is at all binding, by the way. And again, these are international courts and international institutions that the US is basically currently dismantling anyway, or at least retracting support from. Which, why wouldn't they? They just hate the West from the looks of it. Example, this ridiculous decision. Again, that was pushed by someone who hates Britain. It's crazy. Everyone involved in this, unironically, should be tried for treason. I don't see any other reason for it. Literally, by the way, this is how ridiculous it is. So, if they were just giving the islands away, just giving them away, and but we could keep the naval base there, it probably wouldn't be too much of a problem. Because, you know, those islands are whatever. I probably wouldn't care as much as this. However, we're not just giving them away. Our money is being taken from us, from our hard work, labour, buying and selling of goods and services, what have you, on VAT and all that, for buying a house. All that is being taken by the government, and a rather large portion of it is being given to a foreign country to pay rent for something that we own right now. And it's just absurd. In every possible metric, it is absurd. And as I say, I can only sound hyperbolic with this. I think it's because, obviously it's not the entire cabinet, but Starmer, Lammy, all his human rights lawyer friends hate Britain. That's all I can conclude from this. So at this point, all I can say is that, as much as it's a meme to say, oh, can the US come over to the UK and liberate us? I understand that's a meme, but kind of unironically, I am very much hoping that the Trump administration can block this deal every which way. Clearly they are Anglophiles in that administration, which you absolutely love to see, because effectively it means that they are actually acting in Britain's interest, while our government literally isn't. I don't know how else to put it. They just clearly do not like Britain, at least, you know, those in the great offices of state at the very least. They are happy to just take money from you and give it to all of their friends in the unions who are their voters. The Tories should have been doing that, frankly, for 20 years, and people would have been happy, because going against the unions, probably quite popular at this point. And what's the best way to do that? Oh, I mean, I keep saying unions. It's largely the public sector unions that are the issue. Private sector ones, as far as I'm concerned, I've been in the private sector for ages, I've never felt the need to join a union. And those that have, okay, they've managed to win over at Asda and Next, and I probably will do a video on this again, to get equal pay on the shop floor for those on the warehouses, which is absolutely absurd, but again, I've done videos on that before, I'm not going to get into it here. But either way, that is something that Parliament could actually fix overnight by just adjusting a few laws. That's all they have to do. But Labour aren't going to do that, Tories didn't do that for years, and now we're in this mess, and this is why you should vote reform. And I'm slowly seeing that it's more and more couth, let's say, to say that you're voting reform. There's still a lot of people who feel it a bit uncouth, and they're trying to... what's the word? They're trying to coax their way into voting for them by saying, oh, they may not have any of the answers, but at least it's the right direction. And I doubt any of these people have looked at the contract. So give it time, they'll move over, they'll find that supporting Farage isn't actually that cringe, and you'll have a decent amount of voters for reform, and hopefully they do well next election. But if there's one thing I guarantee, once it gets to election season and all this propaganda comes out about Labour being absolutely useless and everyone being able to say, yeah, you know you lost your job because of Labour, or you know you actually feel poorer because of Labour, or you may have got a pay rise but everything else cost more because of Labour, yeah, it's going to be curtains for them. They may get public sector unions voting for them, and that's about it. Because why wouldn't they? They're getting ridiculous pay rises and everyone else is having to foot the bill for that. So great. Anyway, that was all a bit off topic, but I'm just at the conclusion that it's not even been a year of this, and they've not even hidden, Labour I mean, have not even hidden their complete despise for Britain. So screw him. Get him out of here as quick as possible. I doubt there'll be an early election. I think we're in this for another 4 years, and, well, hopefully reality stops them from doing anything too stupid, but it's not managed to do so far, so we'll have to wait and see. Right, anyway, with that, that's everything I had for you for today, so if you want to support the channel, do subscribe, leave a like and a comment. Those are the easiest and freest ways to help the channel. You can become a member from £2 a month and get the complete Laughing at the Guardian back catalogue, which are very entertaining shows. You can also give super chats and super thanks if you think I earn them too. Right, on to Shilling. Tonight, over on the Worcester Club, we will be having a chat about whether feminism has a point and whether feminists did have genuine concerns or not when it came to the modern world. It's going to be a decent chat, I'm sure. Any other streams this week? Don't know yet, you'll have to wait and see, but videos out as and when I can make them. Right, with that, that's everything I had for you for today. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.